And we're live. Happy game day, everyone. Let me know if you can hear me in the comments. I was having some audio issues. That's why we're a couple minutes late going live here. So please just give me a shout out in the chat to make sure that you can hear me. I'm going to try and check things myself here. Going to just wait for a few more people to pop in. Let's talk some MLB. It's opening day. We got some changes here this year, just simply because of some change in rules. So the bases are a little bit bigger. There's going to be no more shifts. I see there's 5 people in there. Oh, you can hear me. That is awesome. Thanks, Kenny. Really appreciate that. So yeah, happy opening day. Like I said, we've got some bigger bases. We've got no more shifts, although Boston has been really sneaky. Instead of moving an infielder over to that right side of the infield, they are taking their left fielder and putting him in shallow right. So they're kind of getting around it. Whether MLB will do anything or not, we'll have to see. But we'll check that out. Yeah, Dob, I'm using a backup set here, so I don't have my actual mic. It's not actually working. So yeah, you're stuck with that little reverb. Hopefully it'll fix itself a little bit here. The mic on this headset is it's not 100%, but it's I think it'll do here for today. So what I want to do here on the sheet, for those of you that are new, for those of you that maybe haven't been on Jagerbomb's Fantasy Sports before, I am Chris. You can check out all of our information below in the video description in terms of the site. Try to get this off of here. Today, what we're going to talk about is the sheet. We've got an 11-game early slate to kick off things today. So what I wanted to do, some of the lineups are coming in. I'm not going to be completely updated on them, but what I want to do really is kind of go over the sheet. And I've also got some of my top picks that I'm going to go over here and all the tabs. There's a ton of information in terms of, we cover 12-plus sports in Jagerbomb's Fantasy Sports. MLB in terms of statistics, data on the cheat sheets, what we offer in terms of research tools is one of the most complex offerings that we have. So that is a great time here to kick the season off, to ask some questions. This is also a video that I'm going to refer people to in terms of possibly a tutorial until I can come up with a tutorial when I get things going. So let's just jump in. We've got the daily matchups tab. That is just a quick look at, who's pitching, what are the odds, the team statistics, the player statistics, the starting lineups. If you don't see any names populate in here, that just means that lineup hasn't been fully updated yet, hasn't been confirmed. The other tab we go to is starting lineups tab. This is one where you will find once we get starting lineups coming in, this is where you're going to find my highlighted picks. And it'll be highlighted either on the DK side or the FanDuel side, because sometimes the pricing differential, it's a good place to kind of show that pricing differential. Some picks I like for FanDuel, some I like for DraftKings, and we notice that quite a bit in MLB. Next up, we've got the team stacking tab, lists all the teams, their implied runs, all their statistics in terms of splits, home, road, left, right, versus daily split. I've explained this in the past, but pretty much what that is determining that team. The pitcher that they're facing is left, so it's going to pull those stats against lefties. If they're facing a righty, it's going to pull those stats over here against righties. So it's just determining that team, what starting pitcher, what handedness the starting pitcher that they're facing is, and what those stats are. So in this column, you can kind of compare all the teams together rather than kind of jumping across left, right, kind of splits that up for you. And then if you slide over, you can actually break down the pitcher that those teams are facing, all the stats for that pitcher. That pitcher splits. Got the bullpen. So the bullpens have really been shaken up probably the most in terms of players for each and every team. So I don't have that data in there yet. But once we get a week into the season, I'm going to start populating that opponent bullpen data as well. Because in terms of upside for your GPPs, obviously you want to target crappy pitchers. Well, if you're targeting a crappy pitcher and it works out for he's probably only going to go 4 innings, 5 max. You get 3, 4, depending on that pitcher's leash. You always want to look at the bullpens because it's going to give you some upside. So if you get a crappy bullpen and a crappy starting pitcher, you can really get that upside and get those double-digit run games where your team really goes off. So that's how I kind of use that team stacking tab. You can see the teams that I like here today are going to be highlighted every day. For those of you that are new, maybe just a refresher, green are going to be my core plays, blue are secondary plays, and yellow are value. So in terms of teams, Atlanta, San Diego, my core teams here on this early slate. Cincinnati's a great value. Probably could be a core team in there as well, but they just provide a lot of great value throughout their lineup in a good hitter's park and a good matchup as well. And then Minnesota, Boston are kind of like my secondary teams off of Atlanta and San Diego in there. Moving over to the starting pitchers tab. You're going to see everything split up by slate as well. Early afternoon, then you got the main slate again, greener core. So opening day, it's absolutely wild to see Max Fried and Shane McClanahan, both Cy Young candidates in their respective leagues in the 8,100, 7,700 range on DraftKings. That's pretty much a steal today. That's probably going to be your chalky two pitchers in terms of cash builds. They're both really good. So, I mean, you don't have to pivot off if you're only going like a 3 max or maybe even up to 20 max. You don't have to pivot off these guys and kind of fade them. They both pitch good in spring. They both have good matchups against bottom 3 projected offenses in Detroit and Washington. But if you are getting into that 20 max and you do have, say, combinations of, say, maybe 8 times or 5 of them together and maybe like 3 or 4 others with them mixed with maybe Scherzer, Snell, any of the top guys in there as well, you can definitely pivot off in maybe 5 of those 20 lineups possibly, because they are going to be super chalky just because of that pricing as well. You got the ace opening day. We've got 5 aces. Sandy Alcantara is going to go under-owned going up against Max. Max has got the better matchup, obviously. He's the favorite in this game. The game's only a 6.5 total. There's 2 games of 6.5 total. Aces going up against each other. But in this one, Scherzer's probably going to be a little bit higher owned just simply because he faces Miami. Not as good of an offense as New York. Sandy Alcantara could be like your 5% gem today. He had more, I believe, complete games, 6 last year, than all the other teams put together. I'd have to double check on that, but I was watching MLB preview show last night. He's just a beast. So I think Max Scherzer is probably going to be the highest owned of the elite pitchers, let's say the top 5 up top. But I really, you can't really you can make an argument for any of them, to be honest. So kind of go with either. I don't think any of them are going to be over-owned. So you just kind of pick your favorite and roll with it because the upside is huge for all of them. They're all going to be a little bit lower owned because, like I said, Fried and McClanahan are just massively underpriced on DraftKings. There's no way in those matchups for those elite pitchers. They should be easily in the 9K range with these guys. Once we get into the season, we're going to see pitchers trend into the 10K range, 10.5, even up to 11. Like we already see that in FanDuel, but DraftKings likes to suck people in early and make it think that lineup building is easy. So don't get stuck in that and think that it's going to be that easy, because putting Fried and McClanahan in your lineup is going to give you an amazing average salary left to pretty much go and target any team that you want. Blake Snell is a pitcher I like pivoting off to, right in between the pricing of those two guys. He's had a solid spring coming back off of not too bad spring, 3.38 ERA, 3.21 xFIP last year, 32% K rate was awesome. He got that swinging strike rate up almost to 15%, which is really good to see. He does give up some fly balls, so he can get hit hard at times, but he does have that 8 to 10, 8 to 11, 12 strikeout, especially against a Colorado team that is way worse on the road. We all know that. Now, the problem is, and they're a little bit riskier, else he would be a core play for me, is just simply because he faces a Colorado team that, yes, they are worse on the road. But if we go look at the splits over here versus lefties and righties, they were absolutely trash versus righties, 79 WRC plus, 100. So the only league average WRC plus versus lefties, but the WOBA was quite a bit higher. So while they weren't generating as many runs, they were getting on base. They had a heck of a lot more opportunities, 30 points higher in the WOBA. And WOBA is just weighted on base percentage. So instead of looking at just on base percentage, which is just if a player gets on base, whether it's a single, a double, a triple, a home run, that just counts as on base. So that's where that on base percentage comes from. WOBA, the weighted on base, looks at and separates singles, doubles, triples, home runs separately. It counts them separately. Obviously, a home run's worth more than a triple, triple more than a double, double more than a single, and so on. So that's why I look at WOBA and don't really look at average on base percentage, that sort of stuff, unless, just kind of mention it in an article to talk about a slash line. But generally, when I talk about players, breaking down splits, breaking down stats, I'm looking at WOBA. WRC plus is weighted runs created, and the plus just means that it's park adjusted. So you can compare players across all different types of stadiums that they're playing in, or compare players a lot more accurately, I should say, because you're using a scale that puts them kind of all on the same plane. Because we know that Coors Field is the best hitters park. Well, we know that, say, Washington, I believe, is one of the better pitchers parks. So, you kind of compare the players that play in those two separate parks a lot closer and more accurately. If you want to learn more about the advanced stats, I'm going to do a video on advanced stats and kind of how I use them, what they mean. Kind of try and explain them a little bit more. I'll probably make it a live show so people can ask questions as well if that interests anyone. But that kind of looks at the starting pitchers tab here. Again, if you got any questions as I'm going along of anything, please throw it up in the chat, and I will definitely get to it and cover any of these stats. We've got park factor in here as well. I forgot to mention that. This park factor, and I'm going to slide over. I'm going to jump around on the sheet a little bit. This is the park factor tab. This pulls from baseballsavant.com. This is looking at just 2022 right now, and it's it looks at the hard hits, the runs. So green obviously for hitters, red is for pitchers parks. So we can see the Mariners were the best pitchers park last year. I was pretty close with the Gardens. They're top 5 pitchers park, top 5 hitters park. I update this daily. I'm probably going to wait. I'm going to weight it is what I'm going to do from 2022 and 2023. I'm going to start weighting that in. So I'm building that out right now. But for the first week of the season or so, it's going to be 2022 park factors. And then I will start adding in the 2023 season as teams start playing games at every single stadium throughout the league. Because Texas is a fairly new stadium. So I kind of want to get that weight in there coming off. And if we look at the Rangers here, it was actually top 10 hitters park. I wasn't sure that was going to be the case as we went into the 2022 season. But it definitely was up there inside of the hitters park. So moving on as the individual. So we got the all batters. This includes all the batters, every position. So what you're going to see here, this from the starting lineups tab, as starting lineups start rolling in, and it is an automated process. So on days when I'm close to the sheet or I'm entering things in manually, so it might come in a little bit faster. If I'm not entering it in manually, it's an automated process where the starting lineups will populate on the sheet here. So it might be just a tiny bit slower when it does that automated process. But when that happens, it sends the batting order throughout the entire sheet if you are researching individual positions. So, for instance, we'll start at the all batters, just kind of explain it, because all these tabs are the same. It's just split up into the different positions. So we've got the slate, the batting order. So as lineups are confirmed, you can now tell on each of these individual position tabs who is starting and who is not. So we can tell where they're batting. So Friedel's second in the lineup. Nolan Gorman's hitting 7th. Jan Gomes is hitting 6th. And that helps a lot because when you're looking specifically at cash games, not so much GPPs, but your projected points for players in the top half of the lineup are obviously going to be more simply because they get more projected at bats. Makes a lot of sense. So cash games for sure. I'm looking at players that are hitting top 5 in the lineup. Not much lower than that unless it's sort of a, let's call it, we really need value to pay up for 2 elite pitchers type thing. Then I'm going to start going down into the bottom half of the order. But for today's slate, for sure, I don't think we really need to do that a whole bunch because we have that savings at pitcher. And then we move over and look at some of the other stuff here. We got DraftKings and FanDuel information, projections. These feed from DFSR.com. I've been with DFSR.com for about 6. I think this is the 7th year now. So we are able to feed our projections into the sheet. These are updated as lineups come in, injuries drop. They update all day long. So when you see little, the sheet and things are updating, that just means the sheet is updating automatically for you with the latest projections and information. So we've got Vegas information, odds, over, under, implied runs. That is all automatic as well. That's going to change throughout the day. Park factor, like we talked about, weather rating. So I go through the weather every morning. And on that, 1 just means everything's good to go, no issues. D just means it's in a dome, obviously no issues. 2 is just like a slight risk, still not really worried about it. Yellow's where I start kind of looking maybe GPP only, not really concentrating on those players for cash games. And then when we start getting into the pink and the red, that just means there's usually it's rain, high risk for rain, in which 4 is like GPP, very high risk only, and red just means fade the game because it's probably going to get rained out. So keep in mind, I go through that every single morning. And if you want to actually look at where that information, what I kind of look at, I use weather.com right now. So you can just kind of scroll over whatever park you're looking at and grab that weather information, and it will load that like you see here. It'll load that page for Chicago. You can look at it hourly. I like to look at the radar. Once we're within that 1 hour window of the game time, I start to look at the radar and kind of see how things are shaping up there as well. So moving over to the individual positions. These are based off of FanDuel because the input for the player pool on the sheet is FanDuel. comes from the FanDuel. What would you call it? The FanDuel input from their site, I guess you could say, from the CSV that gets loaded into the sheet. So keep that in mind. Sometimes players are under different positions, but if you do find that, just let me know and I can start adjusting. And players do move positions and have different eligibilities throughout the year, and sometimes FanDuel and DraftKings have them completely messed up to what positions they actually play. So I've kind of developed a manual process where I can go in and tweak it a little bit just so that they show up when people are researching across here. Another thing that you're going to notice sometimes is Will Smith shows up a lot because there's a pitching Will Smith and there's a hitting Will Smith. And unfortunately, my sheet is pulling and matching names, not their IDs. That's something I'm in the process of probably working into the sheet as the season goes on, but that is a huge overhaul. So just bear with me if you see like Will Smith, the wrong price showing up, something like that. There's another player, Louis Garcia. There's 3 of them now. There's a relief pitcher, a starting pitcher, and a hitter. It's absolutely the most annoying thing in the world. It's only 2 or 3 players, so I never really did much into it in the past. But with more automated process now in the sheet, that is something that I am working on just to match the player ID. So we no longer have those issues. So on this tab, also, you can slide over after Park Factor. You can see what pitcher each player is facing. You can see the batter versus daily split. So let's just say, for instance, we'll pull Tyler Stevenson up. His batter versus the daily split. He's facing a right-hander, so these are his splits right here. These are his splits right here against right-handed pitching in 2022. Obviously, this will update as we get 2023 data. And then we can see his overall, all of his stats for 2022, including advanced stats such as WOBA. X-WOBA is expected. Now, that comes from the same site, Baseball Savant. Anytime you see like the X-WOBA or just slide over here, X-WOBA or X-Slug, all of that means is the expected, and that is based off Baseball Savant works a lot on launch angle. They work on exit velocity, bat speed, that sort of stuff. So they put that sciencey stuff together, and they come up with an expected number. So let's just jump right back over to catcher here and look at Tyler Stevenson. So his WOBA last year was 370, very, very good. You're kind of looking for about a WOBA of like 330, 340. Is above average, and then anything above that, you're getting into elite territory. So he had a 370 WOBA, but the X-WOBA was 318. So based off of his exit velocity and his launch angle and stuff like that, his WOBA should have been somewhere around that 318 range. So we're probably going to see maybe a little bit of a fallback. That's not going to be the same for all players. Baseball, we have hundreds of stats and things to go off of. We have such big sample sizes, so it's really good to analyze data. So nothing's ever certain, but we can kind of really pick out with these advanced stats, you know, if a player is maybe running hot right now, looking to maybe regress or regress in the opposite direction, maybe a player that's struggling, but maybe he's just hitting the ball right to everyone over a short period of time, and that's why his stats are. So that's stuff we're going to talk about throughout the season. Excuse me. Sliding over a little bit more, ISO, that's one that we look at. That's a stat that I concentrate on in terms of GPP upside. Isolated power is what that one is. Anything kind of over the 150s above average, over 200, you're getting into elite power territory. Guys like William Contreras, Danny Jansen, Travis d'Arnaud, down here, Francisco Alvarez, very limited for him. He's actually back down in the minors right now, but heavy power there for catcher as well. So then you can actually break down each of their splits versus right-handed and left-handed pitching if you want. But like I said, I've already got that split out here right beside the starting pitchers that they're facing, which is going to give you their split versus whatever handedness that pitcher is. So then you can go through and kind of see all the picks today. I've got all my picks for anyone that joined the show. Thank you for joining the show. You get all my picks for free today because I've already got them up on the sheet. Now, the night before is usually when I come out with the sheet. So my initial picks will be on these individual position tabs, catcher, first, second, third, short, and outfield, as well as the starting pitcher tab and team stacking tab. You're going to find all my initial picks there as soon as the sheet is posted, whether that be the night before or early in the morning. And then as lineups come out for the slates, you're going to, like I said, on the starting lineups tab, this is where you're going to find my highlighted picks here. So let's just go like that. Now, if I liked Ronald Acuna, say I didn't really like that price, which I do, he could be 6,100. I'm going to play him today. But if I just liked him as a secondary play more on DraftKings, this is where you're going to see the split between the players because the price differentials and the percentages of the salary cap that's going to cost you and that sort of thing. So that's what I meant by this is where you're going to be able to tell my favorite FanDuel plays versus DraftKings plays. So kind of where I would start in terms of if you're opening up the sheet and you want to see my research and how things are going. If it's early in the day, you're going to start looking at, okay, Chris likes these teams, or here's the teams that are listed by runs. Here's the starting pitchers he likes early in the day. And these are going to stay. They're going to change as the information comes in. But go through the individual position tabs, initial picks. And as lineups come in, you're going to drift over, see the favorites. Now, from the favorite team stacking tab, you can actually hover over Atlanta, click the link here, and it's going to take you right to their starting lineup. And then this is where you're going to see the picks once the lineup is confirmed. Now, on this tab, anything in green here, these are the projected lineups for teams. I try and keep those updated on a daily basis. They're obviously going to change. Teams change, especially early in the season with a lot of young players. It's kind of like September baseball right now, as teams are kind of, still trying to sort out what their lineups are going to be like. But this is where the projected lineups are going to be. Still populate stats early in the day. But then once lineups are confirmed, you're going to see the names show up in this column F. And then that is when you're going to see, like I said, the batting order start populating throughout all the individual tabs for the players that are starting. So that's where that comes from. And then once that's done and the slate, we get to about within the final hour before the slate. This is a little different. I started yesterday, but I have my ranks and stacks tab. So I got my top 5 pitchers in the slate, usually throw in some notes on these players. Unless we start getting down to the nitty gritty, things are really busy. I don't always get notes, but I'm going to try and every single day, at least the 5 days of the weekday, I'm going to have ranks up on the sheet here. I'll try my best to get notes. The weekends, I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work out for timing right now, especially with the slate starting a lot earlier. I will definitely try my best. There's always going to be a sheet and there'll always be some highlighted plays, but whether there'll be ranks and stacks, I'm only going to say that that's going to be on the weekdays. So you can see my top 3 stacks. And then, like I say here, I'm going to have more of a strategy video in the future, but generally I'm going to play 2 to 3 players in cash games from probably all 3 of these teams. I'm going to try and, fit them together. But then when it comes to GPPs and stacking, especially on DraftKings where you can get 5, I'm probably going to try and concentrate on just stacking 2 teams together, or probably running 2 main teams, like let's say 4 from one team, 2 from another, and 2 from another kind of thing. You can kind of do like 1 main team, 2 side teams, or maybe 2 main teams and then 1 like third team in there. But I really don't try and expand my GPP lineups outside of 2 to 3 teams, just because we see a lot of high scoring games where they're scoring 8 to 12 runs. And to really capitalize and get the most upside, you need those players that are kind of built together, that are getting the, a home run, 4 hits, multiple hits from 3 or 4 players that are kind of hitting in sequence at the top of the lineup or throughout the lineup. But hitting in sequence, they all kind of correlate and helping each other out for sure. So that's kind of how I build that. And then, yes, we've got rankings here for all positions, including my top value plays. These are all going to be finalized once I'm done the video. As we get closer, we're about an hour and 10 minutes out from lock. I know there's more starting lineups that have came in. I'm already multitasking, doing 4 things at once, so I'm not going to be able to manually enter those other ones in. I believe they're starting to populate now. Yes, they are. We've actually got some lineups that are starting to populate as we're going through the show here. We've got Texas's lineup that has come in, so I can go ahead and erase the projected lineup here. Pretty standard. I think it was almost the same. Let's actually back that up. Compare it here. We got actually Josh Young up in the 5 spot. Grossman's down a bit. All right, and they're going up against Aaron Nola today. That lineup, Rangers expect to be, I don't know if they're a sneaky team. They have a loaded lineup in there, so, and pitching staff now. So, I mean, they're definitely building on what they started to build last year, which was kind of a disappointment. So hopefully Seager and Semien can turn it around. Not a team I'm interested in today against Aaron Nola. It could be a GPP flyer if you're really interested in going that way. But my top 6 kind of finish things off here. I'm really high in Atlanta versus Corbin. That's the best matchup on the board for sure. And when you start breaking down Atlanta's lineup, like I was showing just earlier here, outside of Acuna at 5,700 on DraftKings, they're very affordable. Matt Olson's average was down last year, but he had 34 home runs, over 100 RBIs. He hits lefties well. He's got a 330 WOBA last year, 110 WRC plus. So it's not outstanding against lefties. but it's above average. Acuna, he dealt with some injuries last year, so kind of his against lefty was a little bit down versus the year before, but I'll definitely pay 5,700 there with the savings that we're going to get at pitching. But outside of Acuna, like I said, this is just way too cheap in this matchup today. So I mean, Acuna is easy to fit because you're going to be able to, you're saving money with pitching. You're also saving money with the rest of Atlanta. So probably looking at an Acuna, Riley. I mean, for cash games, I don't think you need to jam Acuna in there. You definitely can. I'm going to see how lineups go. I'm going to discuss that in chat as I start building my lineups once the show's over. But Austin Riley would be my number one ranked points per dollar play for Atlanta today. He absolutely destroyed lefties last year. I don't know if this led the league, but it was top three. 455 Woba, 196 WRC plus, and almost a 350 ISO. 42% hard contact against lefties. He's definitely number one for me on Atlanta. Probably want some sub 4,000 Aussie Albies up to fourth. I was thinking he was going to hit probably a little bit down further in the lineup. Catcher, love Sean Murphy here. Probably my top catcher, going to end up being my top catcher. He crushes lefties. He's hitting fifth in this lineup. Top matchup. Definitely going to get a piece of that. So probably going to have probably going to be sitting with three Atlanta in my cash lineup. Might extend that to 4 or 5 for my DraftKings GPP as well. Up now, I talked about Cincinnati. Let's see if their lineup is in. Yes, their lineup is in. Just really nice value. They're in a good hitter's park. They're fourth, I believe, in implied runs today, going up against Mitch Keller. Mitch was pretty good in preseason in spring training this year. Again, we can't really always look at spring training. It's just kind of a sign. Can really fit your narrative either way you want to look at it. A lot of guys use spring training to work on things, so you don't really know from a pitching standpoint if they're working on things. But I mean, if a pitcher's having success, the pitcher's having success. But they're also facing a lot weaker lineups. If there are stars in spring training, they're only 2 at bats sometimes at most. So it's hard to take away some stuff from that. But Mitch Keller did pitch pretty good in spring training, so there's maybe a little bit of risk there. But the price is right for Cincinnati here. Friedel, he was expecting him to be like 7th or 8th in the projected lineup, so 3,300 is a decent price for him. And then you got these guys versus righties right below him. I like Jake Fraley a lot. Drafted him. I actually picked him up in free agency after my season-long draft. I think he maybe be like the Brandon Drury of last year for the Reds. That kind of gives you that 20 to 25 home runs, maybe 70 to 90 RBIs. Probably only going to hit 250, 260, but I think there's some power upside. Reds are kind of a disaster team here this year, but they have a great hitter's park, and they always seem to put up runs. So from I'm not betting them to win a lot of games, but definitely going to be attacking them from a DFS standpoint, from a value. I really like Tyler Stevenson at the catcher. Ton of power, really good hitter. 319 last year, 372 on base percentage, 318 WOBA. So, like I said, he was where I highlighted when I kind of went through the catcher tab there, that maybe looking for a little bit of a regression in terms of probably the average and like on base percentage, WOBA, that sort of thing. But I think the power is going to remain. They're also planning on playing him so many games at catcher this year, so he's going to be probably a lot of DH first there as well. So I think that's going to help him play more games this year. I mean, that's more of a season-long narrative, but it's going to be good if you got him in season-long, but it's also going to be good for DFS as well, because we may get some different positional eligibility on him coming season. So keep an eye. San Diego, I mentioned here. Marquez was terrible last year. He was awesome to target against, give up a lot of hard contact, high exit velo, high home run to fly ball rate, terrible ERA, not much better xFIP in there, puts lots of batters on base, so that's never good. I think he was actually better in Coors last year. It was really weird. Let's go look at the home road. I don't have the home road on this tab here right now. He is another one of those spring training guys that had a sub-1 ERA, pitched very well, but I'm just not buying it against this San Diego lineup specifically. I don't know if their lineup is in yet. It is not. But we're talking Xander Bogaerts, Juan Soto, Manny Machado in there. This is an expensive team, but again, they're going to be a core team for me today just because of the savings we're going to get with pitching, so it's not going to be hard to fit them in at all. Once we get into the season, we're probably going to see 1 or 2 of these guys over 5,500 and probably Soto in the 6K range. So Soto at 5,300. When we look at the outfielder landscape here, Soto keep in mind, this is only 11-game slate. We're missing 8 teams here. Is 8th in pricing on an 11-game slate? Yeah, no, that's underpriced for Soto, so I'm definitely going to be targeting him here. I like that. I think you could stack all of them, honestly, with the pitching that you have here. Matt Carpenter, if he gets in there, I do like that at 3,300. Makes a lot of sense. I got some value in the middle of the lineup here. For cash, I'm not really going much lower than that. If Carpenter's 5, that's kind of where I'm resting. I do like Jake Cronenworth at second base. You can get him at first base as well on FanDuel, 4,500. $3,000 on FanDuel. I think he's going to have a turnaround this season, probably be back up in that 260, 270 type hitter. So I'm definitely interested in San Diego as a core team. So I'm going to build as much as I can around 2 to 3 San Diego, 2 to 3 Atlanta Braves in my cash lineup. And then I'm just going to try and pick out some value through these other teams. Like I talked about Cincinnati, I'm going to get some value. Friedel, I might try and fit in there. Boston and Minnesota. Now, when we look at these teams, and I believe I'm just going to see if I can find that weather information. Just give me a second here. Early in the season, we deal with a lot of cold weather, so run scoring is down. It's kind of why we see when we look at the Vegas on a lot of these games, I'll go to the starting pitcher tab. It's easier to pick out here. See, only one game is at a 9. We got another one, or 2 games at a 9, another one at an 8.5. A lot of 7.5, 6.5 type stuff. Low scoring. So kind of what I'm trying to do is stay, and I know Atlanta goes against that, but just the matchup's too good. It's like 45 degrees in Washington today, so it's there's probably 5 parks on this early slate where it's under 50 degrees, a couple where it's under 45 degrees. The Yankee game, 42, we're looking at 42 degrees, but the wind is blowing out there, so I think I like the Yankees. Excuse me, as a GPP play. 47, 45 degrees in Washington. Not much wind there, but like I said, I love Atlanta just because of the matchup. It's a little bit colder in Boston. Heavy winds blowing out, about 15, 16 mile an hour. We've got about 30. It's going to be 40 degrees right around game time. The ones where we've got indoors, we've got Tampa and Detroit. So again, I think Tampa could be a value team. They come in quite cheap today. You got Isaac Paredes. He's batting third at 3,400 on DraftKings. I really like that price. Harold Ramirez, 3,600. No one's over 5K. Besides Rosie Arozarena. Whoa. Let me write that one down. Randy Arozarena, 5,100. I think he's going to be a 5,500 type hitter. He's just a beast. So I do like that against a lefty for him. Erod isn't bad, don't get me wrong. But that's a game I think we can target looking at that weather narrative or cold weather narrative. Miami's indoors. Texas is indoors. Not interested in either of those games, unfortunately, because we've got 4 aces. Really good pitchers in those 2 games. Cincinnati outdoors, but it's 61 degrees there, so that kind of gives me that bump to Cincinnati to why I want to get 2 to 3 of them in my cash lineup or stack them in GPP. A little bit of an edge there. St. Louis, it's actually almost 70 degrees with wind blowing out to left field, so you got the Toronto. The Blue Jays, I like a little bit more against Mikolas. He was good last year. Don't get me wrong. Alex Manoah, I just think is a little bit better, but I'm not really targeting that game a lot. But I think that could maybe a GPP spot that people. I know they're going to be on Toronto more than St. Louis, but I think you could really go with either of those teams if you're looking for maybe a low-owned good spot due to the cold weather, like I talked about. Then we got the Minnesota. Yeah, Minnesota, Kansas City is the last game on this slate. It's 67 degrees with wind, like 20 mile an hour winds blowing out. So it's Lopez. I think Minnesota we can consider here. That's a team I forgot to highlight due to that weather. But they're GPP. So I'm actually going to take Boston off here. I'm going to make an update because the wind's blowing out so much in Kansas City. Greinke isn't a pitcher that's going to give up a ton of runs, but we've got Minnesota run line that moved up to almost 4.75 runs here. I think it was like 3.9 or 4.2, somewhere in that range. Last night before that weather, 20 mile an hour blowing out, and it's the warmest game of the bunch on the slate. I think we do have to consider Minnesota bats here as well. I'm not sure I want them for cash games because I like Atlanta and San Diego so much and they're easy to fit. But if you're looking for a value max, Kepler would be right there at the top for me. You've seen him; he was on my ranks for top value plays, so he's definitely in the conversation for cash games for me. But I don't think we really, instead of Carlos Correa and Byron Buxton at their prices on DraftKings especially, I love them a lot more on FanDuel. But at their prices here, I'd rather go with Acuna Riley. Who else do we talk about? Juan Soto, Manny Machado, even Xander Bogaerts in there as well. Over just in cap games, I mean. But those guys are going to be higher on. So your Correa Buxton stack here might be one of those nice pivots off of some of those 5K guys. They're going to be maybe a little bit higher on. So keep that in mind as well. Got Trevor Larnach in here. That's a GPP play for sure, 2,500, but nice price. But definitely consider some Minnesota. All right, going to go through some questions now that I got back to this tab. Sorry, Kenny. All right. Breaking up a bit, yeah. I apologize for the audio on this one. I'm using just some corded. Only one earbud works on this side, and the mic on this thing is crap. I couldn't get my other one connected. It just, my Bluetooth isn't working. It's that time of year where my MLB sheet draws so much power from my computer that it runs all day. It's time for me to upgrade to another computer. Usually seems like every start of MLB season this happens, and I should do it before it blows up. Is the sound still there now, or is it gone? I just adjusted a couple things. We're just closing out here right away anyway, but I'll try and get it back here so I can answer any final questions that are coming in. We'll see. Maybe did that help? The cord is absolutely screwed on there. So if there's any final questions, throw them up here in chat. If not, I am going to wrap things up. I'm going to load in those final lineups. I'm going to go adjust my final rankings, my final picks, and probably post a cash core in chat, in our Discord chat. So if you're not a member, brand new here, like I said, go in the video description below. We have an early bird season. For anyone that's not a member right now, you can grab our whole entire baseball package for the full season for just $65. It's $15 a month right now, so that is an $85 full season. So you're getting about $20 off for the full season of baseball. Or if you're just looking to sign up for a monthly or a daily, you can check us out for one day. We've got daily rates in there as well, or an all sports package where we cover 12 plus sports. We've got like 10 that are live right now, 10 sports that are ongoing right now. So make sure to check that out. Bob, I'm really not sure when my other videos are going to come out. I'm going to try and do as many live shows as I can. It's all going to depend. It's going to take me a week to figure out what my scheduling is, because I literally just spent about 20, 30 hours getting this MLB sheet ready, and I've got about 10 more hours to put into it so that it is fully functional for the season with matches and all the different things that go into the back end, because it is absolutely huge. So it's probably going to be a couple weeks before, like my tutorial and strategy show. If I can get them out sooner, I'll definitely try and push those out for you. But for now, my concentration is going to be a few live shows here and there before the slates, as well as getting this sheet 100% up to par. So if you notice anything that maybe looks off, hit me up in chat. Blowing out. What do you mean by that, Eric? Talking about wind when I was talking about blowing out. Oh, what were the winds in St. Louis again? Just give me a second. I had that up in another tab. Yes, the winds in St. Louis are blowing out about 10 to 13 mile an hour. So not a whole lot, but out to left. So that's good for your right-handed hitters. Toronto is mostly right-handed hitters, especially near the top, except for Belt and Varsho. Vladdy's probably a little bit underpriced. So is Bichette and George Springer, to be honest. The top of that lineup is underpriced right now. They're usually all in the 5K range, with one of them near 6K. So nice underpriced value on Toronto there. And then the other one with the big wind, give me just a second there. Oh, the wind has actually, when I do the update here on Cincinnati, was a little bit different. It's actually blowing in a little bit, but 61 degrees, but only like 5 mile an hour winds in Cincinnati, so not really worried there. And then the big one was Minnesota at Kansas City. So in Kansas City, we got about 20 mile an hour winds blowing out to left center, about 65 to 70 degrees. So it's one of the warmest spots, the heaviest winds, and Minnesota specifically going up against Zach Greinke, who's an aging veteran. He doesn't give up a ton of fly balls or a ton of home runs or anything, but the conditions are right for some scoring for Minnesota. And if they can get to the bullpen, Kansas City's bullpen isn't that great either from last year. So something I'm definitely looking at there. That Minnesota stack is really nice. That was one of the things I was talking about as the sound kind of cut out, so I apologize for that. I'll have better mic in the future. More videos coming as well. And so again, I'll meet you guys in chat. I'm going to have a cash core, as well as stay tuned to the sheet. You're going to see more starting lineups, more ranks, and then we've got starting pitchers tab. We've got a couple an afternoon slate. Maybe be looking at some showdown for that. But then we've got a 3-game night slate as well. Looks to be pretty good. Headlined by Showtime with Ohtani going up against Kyle Muller. So that's a pretty good spot for Ohtani. As you can see, he's my favorite pitcher for the night slate. But we'll talk about that in chat later. Thank you for everyone tuning in. This is the first of many live shows for MLB coming up here in the spring and summer. Very, very excited for the baseball season. Like I said, by far one of the biggest sheets, the most complex, the most stats. It is the one where fantasy baseball is where my love of fantasy sports actually began. I'm going to say 14 years ago, somewhere in there, playing season-long fantasy baseball with very limited resources and research tools without, when it very first started. So thanks for tuning in. Let's have a great season. Let's start out with a really good day today. Good luck, everyone.